The Galactic Federation's Grand Chamber hung like a jeweled pendant against the backdrop of space, its crystalline walls refracting starlight across the assembled delegates of 1,000 worlds. Commander Rayna Blackwood stood before the High Council, her military dress uniform pristine, her spine straight as steel. The evidence she carried would shatter centuries of carefully maintained order. "Honorable Council," she began, her voice steady despite the gravity of the moment, "I present proof of systematic exploitation by senior Federation members against developing worlds." The holographic display activated behind her, flooding the chamber with data streams highlighting resource theft, manipulated trade agreements, and manufactured conflicts. High Counselor Zenthur, his translucent body pulsing with bioluminescent anger, raised multiple appendages in objection. "These accusations are unprecedented. Earth was granted membership barely 50 years ago. You dare to question systems established over millennia?" Rayna's dark eyes met his compound ones without flinching. "I dare to question injustice, regardless of its age." She advanced through the projection, highlighting specific cases. The Meridian Sector's mineral rights, stripped from the native Vanir. The Cygnus blockade, artificially created to control emerging technologies. "This isn't order, it's oppression." The chamber erupted in multilingual chaos. Some delegates immediately began transmitting to their homeworlds, while others demanded immediate sanctions against Earth. Through it all, Rayna stood unwavering, knowing this moment would define humanity's future among the stars. First Minister Thoth of the Inner Worlds rose, his ancient form commanding immediate silence. "Commander Blackwood, you represent a species that achieved faster-than-light travel mere centuries ago. You cannot comprehend the delicate balance required to maintain galactic stability." "With respect, First Minister," Rayna countered, "perhaps it's our youth that allows us to see clearly. We refuse to accept limitations on Earth. Why should we accept them among the stars?" The evidence continued to scroll behind her, countless worlds held back, their development carefully controlled by the Federation's ruling members. Humanity's rapid rise had threatened this carefully maintained hierarchy, leading to increasingly aggressive attempts to contain Earth's expansion. High Counselor Zenthur's bioluminescence shifted to deep crimson. "You leave us no choice. The Council will vote on Earth's continued membership." The words fell like stones in still water, rippling through the assembly. Rayna knew what would come next. Earth's intelligence networks had already detected the Council's predetermined decision. This wasn't truly a trial, it was theater, meant to justify actions already in motion. The vote was swift and decisive. Earth's membership was revoked, its colonies declared independent territories, its ships banned from Federation space. As Rayna turned to leave the chamber, First Minister Thoth's voice carried one final warning: "You have chosen isolation, Commander. Remember that when your world stands alone against the darkness between stars." She paused at the threshold, allowing herself a small smile. "We've never feared the dark, First Minister. We learned long ago to light our own way." The journey back to Earth was tense but purposeful. Aboard the diplomatic vessel Hyperion, Rayna met with Director Marcus Vale of Earth Intelligence, their conversation encrypted against any surviving Federation monitoring systems. "Phase 1 is complete," Rayna reported, removing her formal uniform jacket. "The Federation reacted exactly as predicted." Marcus nodded, his weathered face illuminated by stellar data streams. "Already receiving signals from sympathetic worlds. The Arcturus group, the Vanir remnant, even elements within the Cygnus sector. They've waited centuries for someone to challenge the old order. And the technology embargo? Won't matter. Our deep space facilities were transferred to ghost sites months ago. The Federation's monitoring nets are still tracking our decoy installations." Rayna studied the tactical display, watching as Earth's official status changed from member world to restricted territory across Federation networks. The isolation they'd feared for so long had finally arrived, but on their terms. Begin Phase 2, she commanded. Contact our allies in the outer systems. If the Federation wants to cast us out, let's show them exactly what humanity does in exile. As the Hyperion approached Earth's orbital defense grid, Reyna watched her homeworld rise against the star-filled black. The Federation thought they were punishing Earth, forcing it into isolation. They didn't understand that humans had evolved in isolation, thrived in it, learned to turn limitations into launching points for innovation. The Council had rejected Earth, believing they were containing a threat. Instead, they had removed the only constraints holding humanity back. As ships across Earth's territory began implementing predetermined protocols, as hidden networks activated and sleeper cells awakened, Reyna knew the real story was just beginning. The Federation had ruled the stars for millennia through careful control and manipulation. Now they would learn what happened when humanity was finally free to forge its own path among the stars, not as supplicants to an ancient order, but as architects of a new one. The next message to Earth's government would be brief: Operation Phoenix is active. Let them see what humanity can really do. 6 months after Earth's expulsion, diplomat Julian Thane stood in the hidden conference chamber of Station Umbra, a facility that officially didn't exist in the asteroid fields beyond Pluto. Before him, representatives from 17 species gathered in secure holographic projection, each a victim of Federation manipulation. The Federation calls this their Golden Age. Julian addressed the assembly, his tall frame casting a shadow across the tactical display. But for most of us, their gold was built on our resources, our labor, our sacrificed futures. Zara of the Vanir shifted her crystalline form, fragments of light dancing across the chamber. Pretty words, human, but words alone won't break the Federation's grip. They've stripped our worlds, relegated us to mining posts and agricultural colonies. Which is exactly why we're here. Julian activated the central display, revealing a complex network of trade routes, hidden stations, and stockpiled resources, Earth's shadow infrastructure, built in secret over decades. While they watched our official channels, monitored our registered shipyards, we were building this. The assembled delegates studied the display with multiple eyes, sensory appendages, and scanning devices. Julian continued, every restriction they placed on us became a lesson in innovation. Every monitored channel taught us to build unmonitored ones. Now we're offering you partnership in what we've built. Delegate Vorkath of the Arcturus group raised his scaled head. The Federation's response will be severe. They've never tolerated organized resistance. Because they've never faced organized resistance that could match their technology, Julian countered. He gestured, and the display shifted to show Earth's hidden technological advances. These are just the prototypes. Quantum communications that bypass their monitoring networks. Energy systems that don't rely on their controlled resources. Ships that can outmaneuver their superior designs. The chamber hummed with private communications as delegates conferred with their homeworlds. Zara moved closer to the display, her crystalline structure analyzing the data at frequencies invisible to human eyes. You've been planning this since before your expulsion. Julian nodded. The Federation's betrayal wasn't a surprise, it was an opportunity. They believe isolation will weaken us. Instead, it's given us freedom to act. And what do you want in return for these technologies? Vorkath demanded. Alliance. Real alliance, not the Federation's version of vassal states serving their masters. Equal partnership in building something new. Julian swept his hand through the display, expanding it to show potential trade routes, military coordination, and shared research initiatives. Together, we have the resources, the technology, and the motivation to challenge their control. Zara's form pulsed with internal light, the Vanir equivalent of laughter. You're not just planning to survive outside their system. You want to break it entirely. The Federation maintains power by keeping species isolated, dependent, and controlled, Julian confirmed. We propose the opposite, open collaboration, shared advancement, mutual defense. They won't expect it because it goes against everything they believe about lesser species. The delegates began signaling agreement, first individually, then in groups. Through secure quantum channels, ships were already moving into position, resources being redirected, preparations long held in readiness activated. Vorkath was the last to signal acceptance. The Federation will notice when we begin implementing these changes. Their response will be immediate and harsh. Julian's smile held no humor. They're already watching, measuring our official activities against their models and predictions. But they're watching the shadows we want them to see, while the real work happens in darkness they don't even know to look for. As the alliance took shape, Julian received a secure transmission from Commander Blackwood, Phase 2 completion confirmed. Shadow network active. Begin Phase 3 implementation. He looked out at the assembled delegates, representatives of species that had suffered under Federation control for generations. They taught us to fear the dark between stars, he echoed Reyna's words from the council chamber. Let's show them why they should have feared what was growing in those shadows. The culmination of decades of planning was now in motion. While the Federation congratulated themselves on containing the human threat, humanity's real victory was spreading through the galaxy like a virus through their carefully maintained systems. The next phase would reveal just how deeply that virus had penetrated. Every restriction, every punishment, every attempt to contain humanity had only served to perfect their methods of circumvention. Now those methods would become weapons in the hands of every species that had ever suffered under Federation control. As the delegates finalized their agreements, Julian sent a simple acknowledgement to Earth Command, Shadow Alliance confirmed. The galaxy is about to learn why keeping humanity in the dark was their greatest mistake. The Federation had created the perfect conditions for revolution, not through force of arms, but through the quiet rebellion of every world they tried to keep subordinate. Humanity hadn't just adapted to isolation, they'd turned it into a catalyst for the biggest change the galaxy had seen in millennia. And in the shadows between stars, that change was already spreading. Federation Space Control detected the first anomalies 3 months after the Shadow Alliance formed. Small disruptions at first, communication delays, minor navigational errors, unexplained power fluctuations. Nothing severe enough to raise serious alarm, but together forming a pattern that the highest levels of Federation security struggled to understand. High Counselor Zenthuar floated in his private chambers, his bioluminescence flickering with agitation as reports streamed in from across Federation space. Another system failure in the Centauri trade routes, his aide reported. Third this week. And the Rigel Shipping Consortium reports increasing problems with their automated guidance systems. And our technicians? Zenthuar's light patterns shifted to deep purple with frustration. Find nothing concrete. The systems appear to be functioning normally, yet the errors persist. What neither of them knew was that deep within an unmarked facility on Luna, Dr. Ravenna Winter was monitoring the cascade of small failures with satisfaction. Her quantum interface displayed the true scope of what the Federation was experiencing, the first phase of a virus that didn't attack their systems directly, but subtly altered how they functioned. Status report, she transmitted to the Shadow Alliance Coordination Center. Federation commercial traffic down 12%, the AI response came immediately. Their adaptive systems are attempting to compensate, exactly as predicted. Each compensation creates 3 new vulnerabilities. Ravenna allowed herself a small smile. The Federation's greatest strength, their integrated, automated systems, was becoming their greatest weakness. While they searched for external attacks, the corruption was spreading from within, carried by their own security protocols. In the Arcturus sector, Vorkath's ships were already moving through the gaps created by unreliable Federation scanning systems. Zara S. Vanir had begun reclaiming their ancient mining territories, their crystalline ships appearing and disappearing through holes in the Federation surveillance network. The Federation built their empire on control, Ravenna transmitted to the Alliance Council. Control of resources, of trade routes, of information itself. But they forgot one crucial detail: complex systems have complex failure points. On 100 worlds marked as developmentally restricted by Federation decree, hidden factories were coming online. The technology Earth had developed in secret was being replicated, improved upon, integrated with local innovations the Federation had dismissed as primitive. Commander Blackwood's voice came through on a secure channel. The Federation's High Council is calling an emergency session. They're finally beginning to realize the scale of what they're facing. Too late, Ravenna replied. The infection rate just passed the critical threshold. Their entire network is compromised. Every attempt to purge the virus only spreads it faster. In the Federation's Grand Chamber, now heavy with tension and fear, First Minister Thoth faced the assembled delegates. "We are under attack," he declared, his ancient voice trembling. "These disruptions are coordinated, deliberate. The patterns suggest." He paused, his multifaceted eyes widening as new data scrolled across his neural interface. Across Federation space, supposedly restricted worlds were showing massive energy signatures. Trade routes were shifting, resources flowing through unofficial channels. The carefully maintained hierarchy of their society was unraveling. "Impossible," Zenthuar whispered, his bioluminescence paling to almost white. "These primitives couldn't have, the humans couldn't have." But they had. While the Federation watched Earth's official activities, measured their registered technological progress, and congratulated themselves on containing the human threat, humanity had been teaching others how to do what they did best: innovate, adapt, and overcome. In her Luna facility, Ravenna initiated the final sequence of the virus. Across Federation space, their vaunted control systems began to truly fail. Not with catastrophic shutdowns, but with subtle corruptions that made their automated society increasingly impossible to maintain. The Federation built their power on assuming they were the most advanced civilization, she transmitted to the Alliance. They never considered that advancement might take forms they hadn't anticipated. The revolution wasn't coming with fleets of warships or declarations of independence. It was already there, embedded in every system, every protocol, every piece of technology the Federation had used to maintain their control. Their own arrogance had blinded them to the possibility that the primitive species they dismissed might find ways to turn their own systems against them. As the Federation's carefully maintained order began to crumble, Ravenna sent one final message to Earth Command: Phase 3 complete. Their control systems are compromised beyond recovery. The galaxy is about to remember why humanity's greatest innovations always came from our darkest moments. The Federation had created this situation themselves. By casting Earth into darkness, they had given humanity the perfect environment to do what they did best: adapt, evolve, and emerge stronger. Now that strength was becoming a beacon for every species that had ever dreamed of breaking free from Federation control. The revolution wasn't just beginning. It had already won. The Federation's emergency response fleet dropped out of hyperspace above Earth, a show of force meant to crush the uprising before it could spread further. 500 ships, the largest armada assembled in centuries, their weapons primed and shields at maximum power. Fleet Admiral Xandar stood on his command deck, his segmented exoskeleton gleaming under the battle lights. "Send the demand for immediate surrender," he ordered. "Let's end this human infection before." His words cut off as his tactical display suddenly filled with new signatures. Rising from behind Earth's moon, emerging from camouflaged asteroid bases, powering up from hidden orbital platforms, humanity's true fleet revealed itself. "Impossible," Xandar breathed. The ships weren't the crude vessels Earth had registered with the Federation. These were something entirely new, their designs incorporating technologies that shouldn't exist at humanity's development level. On the bridge of the Earth Defense Force flagship Prometheus, Fleet Commander Darius Vale smiled grimly. Send our response to their surrender demand. Across the Federation fleet's communication systems, a simple message appeared: no. The battle that followed would be studied for centuries to come. Federation ships found their targeting systems inexplicably miss, their shield frequencies somehow known to the enemy, their tactical advantages negated by an opponent that seemed to anticipate their every move. They're inside our systems. Xandar's tactical officer reported, mandibles clicking in panic. Every countermeasure we activate is already compromised. Darius watched as the Federation fleet's formation began to break apart. They never understood, he transmitted to Earth Command. While they were watching our shipyards, counting our registered vessels, measuring our official capabilities, we were learning everything about them. Every weakness. Every flaw. Every assumption they made about their own superiority. The battle wasn't just happening in space. Across Federation territory, the carefully hidden network of allies was rising. The Vanir crystalline fleets struck mining outposts that had once been their homeland. Arcturus raiders reclaimed trade routes they'd been forbidden to use. 100 species labeled as primitive revealed technologies and capabilities the Federation had never suspected they possessed. In the Federation's Grand Chamber, now in chaos, First Minister Thoth received the reports with growing horror. How did we not see this coming, he demanded of his advisors. How did they build all this in secret? High Counselor Zenthuar's bioluminescence had faded to a sickly pale. Because we saw what we expected to see. We measured them against our standards, our assumptions about how civilization should develop. The Federation fleet above Earth was in full retreat now, their formations shattered, their command structure in chaos. Not from overwhelming force, but from finding themselves fighting an enemy that knew them better than they knew themselves. Darius transmitted to all Allied forces, Phase 4 complete. Begin final operations. Across the galaxy, the hidden network activated fully. Federation control systems failed completely, their automated defenses turning against them, their communication networks flooding with data that revealed centuries of manipulation and exploitation. On 1,000 worlds, populations learned the truth about how the Federation had kept them dependent and controlled. Trade routes reopened outside Federation authority. Resources began flowing freely between allied worlds. In her Luna facility, Dr. Winter monitored the cascade of system failures with satisfaction. They built their power on controlling information she transmitted to the Alliance Council. They never considered what would happen when that information broke free. The Federation's response fleet limped back to their territory, but they were returning to a changed galaxy. Their authority was crumbling not through military defeat, but through the exposure of their own systems of control. Commander Blackwood's voice came through on the command channel. The Federation Council is asking for terms. Darius studied the tactical display, watching as centuries of carefully maintained order transformed into something new. Tell them the terms are simple. The old system ends. A new one begins. One where no species is held back, no world is kept dependent, and no civilization is judged by standards not their own. The Federation had cast humanity into darkness, thinking isolation would weaken them. Instead, it had forced humanity to become stronger, to innovate in ways the Federation had never imagined possible. Now that strength was becoming the foundation for a new order in the galaxy. The Federation's own prophecy had come true, but not as they'd expected. Humanity had indeed stood alone against the darkness between stars, and had learned to use that darkness to reshape the galaxy itself. As the Federation fleet disappeared into hyperspace, Darius sent a final message to Earth Command: the reckoning is complete. The galaxy is about to learn a new way to reach for the stars. The war hadn't been won with superior firepower or overwhelming force. It had been won by turning the Federation's own systems of control against them, by uniting those they had tried to keep divided, by proving that true civilization didn't come from controlling others, but from setting them free. The stars themselves seemed to shine brighter, as if celebrating the dawn of a new age. 1 year after the Federation's collapse, the new Galactic Assembly gathered for the first time. Unlike the Federation's imposing chamber suspended in space, this meeting took place on Earth, in a transparent dome overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Representatives from hundreds of worlds sat not in hierarchical tiers, but in a circle of equals. Commander Raina Blackwood, now Earth's chief representative, stood to address the gathering. The same woman who had once exposed the Federation's corruption now helped shape what would replace it. "A year ago, we faced a choice," she began, her voice carrying across the chamber. "Accept control or forge a new path." The Federation believed that civilization required rigid hierarchy, that progress had to be carefully managed, that some species needed to be held back for the good of all. Zara's crystalline form shimmered with agreement. They forgot that true strength comes from diversity, not uniformity. From innovation, not control. The assembly chamber's displays showed the transformation that had occurred over the past year. Trade routes once restricted now flowed freely. Worlds previously designated as primitive were sharing technological advances that the Federation had never imagined possible. Species that had been deliberately kept isolated were forming new alliances, combining their unique perspectives to solve problems that had stumped the Federation for centuries. Dr. Ravenna Winter presented the latest data. The combined scientific output of previously restricted worlds has increased by 4,000%. When we removed the Federation's artificial barriers, we unleashed potential they had deliberately suppressed for generations. Julian Thane, now leading the Assembly's diplomatic corps, added, "The Federation's greatest fear was that unrestricted development would lead to chaos. Instead, we're seeing unprecedented cooperation. Species are finding their own paths while working together, supporting each other without demanding conformity." The evidence was visible in every sector of space. The Vanir had reclaimed their ancient territories, but instead of isolating themselves, they were sharing their unique crystalline technology with other worlds. The Arcturus group had transformed from raiders into innovators, their understanding of spatial mechanics revolutionizing transportation networks. Even former Federation worlds were thriving under the new system. Without the burden of maintaining artificial hierarchies, they were free to focus on genuine advancement rather than control. "But our greatest victory," Raina continued, "isn't in what we've built. It's in what we've prevented." The display showed hundreds of emerging civilizations, species just beginning to reach for the stars. These worlds will never know the Federation's restrictions. They'll grow at their own pace, develop in their own ways, and join us as equals when they're ready. Fleet Commander Darius Vale, monitoring the assembly from orbit, transmitted his latest security report. The few Federation loyalists who had attempted to maintain the old order had found no support. The galaxy had tasted freedom, and there was no returning to the past. "We didn't just break the Federation's power," he noted. "We broke the very idea that any species has the right to control another's development." In her Luna facility, Dr. Winter was already working with a coalition of scientists from 30 different species, combining perspectives that the Federation would never have allowed to collaborate. "They thought isolation would weaken us," she transmitted to the assembly. "They never understood that humans thrive on overcoming limitations." The assembly's first official act was to establish the Stellar Rights Accord, guaranteeing every species the freedom to develop without interference, while ensuring support was available to any who needed it. The Federation's forced hierarchy was replaced by voluntary cooperation, their controlled development by free exchange of ideas. "They cast us into darkness," Raina concluded her address, believing it would diminish us. "Instead, we learned to see in the dark, to navigate paths they never imagined existed. Now we offer that same opportunity to every species reaching for the stars." As the assembly moved to formal voting on the accord, messages poured in from across the galaxy. New worlds requesting membership. Former Federation territories embracing the change. Species long thought primitive revealing advances that defied expectation. The Federation had ruled through control, believing it was the only way to maintain civilization among the stars. Humanity had proved there was another way, not through dominance, but through partnership. Not through restriction, but through freedom. The stars belong to everyone, Reyna's final words echoed through the chamber. And together, we'll reach heights the Federation never dreamed possible. Above Earth, ships from 100 worlds moved in complex patterns, their designs as varied as the species that created them. Each represented a unique path to the stars, a different way of seeing the universe. Together, they formed something new, not a single enforced order, but a harmony of diverse perspectives. The Federation had rejected Earth, casting humanity into darkness. In doing so, they had freed humanity to light a new path to the stars, not just for themselves, but for every species that dared to dream of something greater. The galaxy would never be the same. And that was exactly what humanity had intended all along.